Okay, good evening. It's 6 o'clock and the Coney County Board of Zoning Appeals meeting for December 17th, 2025 will now come to order. The first item of business would be approval of minutes of 11/24/25. Do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Do we have any discussion or changes? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, no dissent, okay. The next item is revision. We have another revision to the 2026 meeting calendar. It appears that the date that we picked, 10/26, is in conflict with another session involving I think the elections here in the county. So do we have a motion to change the date from 10/26 to 10/13?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Do we have any discussion? There being no discussion, all in favor? Okay. Now, we'll read a brief statement about the rules and procedures for this evening's meeting. The applicant will provide a presentation regarding the needs for the variance for 5 minutes, with the board having the ability to grant more time if needed. The board will ask questions after each presenter. The staff will address any additional issues. Citizen comments will be allowed for a period of 3 minutes each, with the board's request that any speaker not repeat what others are saying, but rather concur or state other facts not previously presented. There will be an applicant rebuttal period if necessary. The board will ask any further questions before deliberations. Once the board begins its deliberations, there will be no further input from the floor, and the board will begin its voting on 4 questions, and a negative vote on any one of the 4 questions will require a denial of the variance or the special exception. Okay, with that, we move on to tonight's variance. Variance application VA 25000019, David Irvine, request release from section 16-122 to build over the floodplain less than 3 feet above the base flood elevation. TMS number is 052-03-06-010, and the address is 331 Timeout Place, Tomassi, South Carolina, 29686. Would the applicant please come forward and state his name for the record?
Good evening. My name's David Urban. I live at 331 Timeout Place.
Would you make your presentation as to
Okay.
why you
Thank you.
why you feel?
Thank you all for coming out this evening. Again, I want to add on to my house that's been existing for, I'm sorry, turn this off. Been built more than 60 years on Lake Cherokee. It was originally built on top of a boathouse, and a second addition was added probably 15, 20 years later. I've owned the house more than 40 years. The house has been in existence more than 60 years. The maximum floodplain is listed at 1,081 feet, which is the height of the original dam, which was built in 1957. My house was built in the early 60s, original part of it. My floor now sits at 1,082.5 feet. Since I've been there, and from by history, the house has never been flooded. The spillway, the dam was revised in 2005. Prior to 2005, there was at the highest level ever was 1,079.6. I remember it happening, and that caused the dam to be revised. The spillway was widened, made to its current height of 1,075.5 feet. The lake is currently drained right now, about 12, 15 feet down, and they're actually revising the spillway again after Hurricane Helene. Helene, we did not have any flooding on my property. It made it up to the top of the seawall, but it did not go over the seawall. And that was probably the biggest rain we've had in history in the area. My goal is to have the house on one level. I want it to be a handicap access. The oldest part is going to be my living room. We're adding redoing the back bedroom, and we're adding another bedroom with a master suite type thing, and a new kitchen. And a screen porch across the back. That's pretty much it. As Ken wrote in his note, that Ken Dexey wrote that he's been there since he was a child, and there've never been any flooding issues.
Okay, does the board have any questions? Anything you want to ask the gentleman? Okay, please take your seat. This evening, we're going to change our format a little bit. Normally, we would start our deliberations and we would go through the four questions. However, tonight, because it's with regard to chapter 16, there are a number of items there that we need to at least go through and review before we go to the question. So what we're going to do is go through the chapter 16. There's two sections that are applicable. One would be 16-166, which are considerations, and then we would go through and review 16-169, which are conditions. And then, once we've gone through that, then we would get into our discussions on the four questions. At this time, let's see here, before we start, do you have any staff comments that you'd like to make?
Yes, sir. So the only thing, and I don't know if it might be, what I'm gonna say will probably make a lot more sense once we go through all of this.
Yeah.
But just to consider 16, 166, and 169 of the ordinance, when dealing with the flood management prevention ordinance. Essentially, we also have, hang on one second. Where's that? So this is coming from, and I'll scroll up so y'all can see what it actually is. So this is coming from the FEMA Floodplain Management Variances National Flood Insurance Program. This statement right here, so in some cases, a variance granted for the floodplain management purposes can result in a project that does not meet the minimum standards of the NFIP, because a variance can lead to an increased risk to life and property. Variances from flood elevation requirements or other floodplain management requirements should be granted only rarely. So just keeping that in mind when going over 169, which is the conditions, and then 166, which is the considerations.
Okay. Very good.
And I
Thank you.
can pull those again if need be.
Okay. Does everybody have a copy of chapter 16?
So it's in the very back of y'all's packet.
Okay. So, under the considerations and passing upon, excuse me, such applications, the board shall consider all technical evaluations, all relevant factors, all standards specific in other sections of this article, and 1, the danger that materials may be swept onto other lands to the injury of others would be one consideration. The danger to the life and property due to flooding or erosion damage, and the safety of access to the property in times of flood for ordinary and emergency vehicles. The susceptibility of the proposed facility and its contents to flood damage and the effect of each damage on the individual owner. The importance, number 4, excuse me, the importance of the services provided by the proposed facility to the community, which I think is non-applicable in this case. The necessity of the facility of a waterfront location where applicable. The availability of alternative locations not subject to flooding or erosion damage for the proposed use. The compatibility of the proposed use with the existing and anticipated development, and the relationship of the proposed use to the comprehensive plan and the flood plan management program for that area. The expected heights, velocity, duration, rate of rise, and sediment transport of the floodwaters, and the effects of wave action, if applicable, expected at the site. The costs of providing governmental services during and after flood conditions, including maintenance and repair of public utilities and facilities such as sewer, gas, electrical, water systems, streets, and bridges. With that, is there any discussion with regard to any of the points under consideration?
Well, number 9 doesn't apply. There is no water or sewer or
No.
gas there.
No. Any, having to do with anybody have any comments that they want to make or thoughts with any of those questions?
Well, I don't know a whole lot about flood issues, and I think it's, I'm wondering how on earth do we really make a judgment on some of these things? Because one, is there a risk of flood? And it sounds like there isn't a very high risk of flood, and it hasn't been in, 50, 60 years? So if there isn't a high risk of flood, then do we then have to be concerned about the safety of that a flood might be to themselves or people around them? I'm not sure how
That's for us to
we
determine,
judge that.
that's for the board to determine.
Okay.
Any, yeah,
Mr. Chairman, they can't flood because the water can only go over the dam. If it gets so high, it goes down the spillway. So
That's
a
why
lot of
there's
this,
a
a lot of
spillway.
this stuff is, it's written like this is in a flat area where it could flood, but if the water gets, what he says by his elevations, the emergency spillway, the water gets up, so it just goes down the spillway. It can't flood. And there, these, part of this is asking, which is the integrity of the dam. Well, that's done by the state, not us or anything. I think this big wide scope doesn't apply to a lot of things they're asking us to look at.
I think
Thank
number 2 is the main thing, is whether or not his house, since it's in a floodplain,
yep,
I think that's the only one, because it's not a facility that the public comes into. It's a waterfront location, but he is the only occupant. It's not like he's starting a boarding house or a motel. So, there's no public there, and as I say, there's no infrastructure there beyond electricity and high-speed internet. There's no sewer, water, or gas, so number 9 doesn't apply. And, during Hurricane Ivan, it did flood, but it flooded on the upper end of Jumping Branch in the first section, and it flooded there just simply because they had allowed beavers to build up a pond above the lake itself, and when it washed out, it caused the flood. It wasn't because the lake couldn't manage the water, it was because the people that owned the property above it allowed a beaver dam to go in, and when it washed away, then that caused what flooded on Jumping Branch Road. And it has since, the dam and the spillway have both been modified since that time. So I think the state's being proactive in taking care of things, and I don't think, based on not flooding during Helene, it is an issue. I think they're just grasping because they want to put everything in the floodplain to collect the fees.
Anybody? From my perspective, one of the concerns that I have is the situation that happened at Lake Lure. They have the same type of a situation as Cherokee Lake. At Lake Lure, they have a dam and they have a spillway. And they topped that whole thing. They topped the dam and everything else, and that caused a horrific amount of damage to
You
all
don't
the
have to have a
property and
dam.
stuff. Huh?
Go to Irwin, Tennessee. The river there flooded the interstate out. And there's no dam there. It was just the river and the amount of rainfall.
Yeah, but
We have no
there
control.
is a dam in Lake Lure.
But there's not one in Irwin, Tennessee, and it flooded out over a half a mile beyond the
Yeah.
banks of the river.
But the point that I'm making is that you could get the potential for flooding here in a 100-year storm, if you would. And also when you're talking about I went in and also I looked at the state's website having to do with areas and where there were floodplains. And I typed in the address 331 Timeout Place, Tallahassee, South Carolina. And it said this area is in a high-risk flood area that is at least 1 in 4 chance of flooding during a 30-year mortgage in a high-risk area. So from their standpoint, there is some.
But he's owned the property 60 years, and the house has been built 60 years, and it hasn't flooded.
But I don't think they ever had a flood up on Lake Lure either until the last one. I mean, with a 100-year event, that happens, when when it wants to happen, not on a schedule or anything, and you never know when it's gonna come about. That's a concern that I have.
So you're predicting something worse than Helene's gonna hit us?
Could be with the way the climate's going and stuff. We're getting more and more severe storms and things like that.
That's not
So
true.
No, we're just in a cycle.
That is not true.
what?
The climate? Nah.
No, I say we are getting more severe storms.
not.
Yes, we are.
No.
That's the.
For those of us that's lived here a while, this is just a cycle we're going through.
Yeah.
Well, I agree, it might be a cycle, but I say at the present time, we're going through a
Well, it's
period
not-
where we
not
seem to
this-
be getting
it's
more severe
cycles and not
storms in
trend.
our area.
It's a cycle and not a trend.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, one thing that sets them apart from Lake Lure has got they have the same problem we have I'm a dam inspector for
Yeah.
USDA. They have the same problem in Greenville. We got several over there. All this new construction, Lake Lure had all the logs and stuff go down into the river. Where he ain't got no log in nothing.
No, okay.
They may have a dead tree float every now and then, but he doesn't have that problem. Lake Lure, they had monumental construction going on, logging, and when the storm come up, all that junk went right down into the river, and that plugged everything up.
Yeah, they did get a
And that's the
massive,
problem, and that's the
that was
problem. We have several dams in Greenville, that because one of them has the watershed drains all the way from Donaldson Center, we constantly getting calls, go out there and get all that, logs and stuff out of the intake.
Yeah,
But he doesn't have that problem. There's no construction or anything going on up there, logging or anything.
And then when you look at what's below the dam, that's the thrift property, and it's all pasture until you get down to Cherry Hill Church. All the way through to Fiddler's Cove is just pasture. So there's not structures below the dam like you have in other areas where there's massive buildup below a dam situation.
so you're saying there's plenty of area for the water to.
About 1,200 acres.
But the question then is, I mean, if the people that are looking at the opportunity of whether it's gonna be a flood or not a flood, if it's a 1 in 4 chance of a flood, that sounds like a pretty high number. You wonder, how
I
do they
agree.
come at that?
Yeah.
If in fact there's very little risk because of all the other factors we've talked
Yeah.
about, why would they come up with a factor of 1 in 4?
I don't know.
Maybe it should be 1 in 100 or something rather than 1 in 4. That's a pretty high number.
Yeah, 1 in 4, based on a 30-year mortgage.
Yeah, that's a pretty high number.
I would say, that's my feeling too. So,
FEMA's never.
I have a question for the applicant. Do you have any land that would get you out of the floodplain? Huh?
But it's back on my property.
If I went up and I viewed your property yesterday, I drove into your driveway and looked at it, and then I viewed it from the driveway next door to you. What would happen if you were to add on to the back of your house rather than the side?
Well, one, I have a septic tank.
Hmm.
I have a septic tank back there.
Yeah.
And that would limit the amount of additions I have. And no matter what I would do, I'd still be in the floodplain. My current house is on the floodplain totally.
Totally?
And it's, unless I built up way above, which then defeats my thing of trying to be handicap access and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I'm, of course, grandfathered in for most of the house.
Yeah.
We're-
I noticed you do have a slope sloping down to the lake, so I was just wondering if you built on the back side of it, would that get you out of, when the people gave you the certificate on the elevations and so forth, they didn't tell you that you could get out of the floodplain at any point?
Well, they may mark where the floodplain is, and the driveway is not in the floodplain.
Yeah.
But again, that's where the septic is,
You're in the driveway?
and well, it's behind the house and goes down across down the hill.
Okay, well,
But what you're saying on the floodplain is what that roof catches, how much it's gonna put. Is that right?
I'm sorry?
The structure, what the structure catches with the roof adds to the volume. That's what that's what the concern is.
no, the concern is that if you have a flood,
Right.
what it does is it could wipe out his house. He's built out over the water, essentially, because he built over a boathouse. And if you look at the elevations, the lower part of his structures, where the beams are for his first floor, are basically almost at
In the
the,
water, right?
No, it's 1.5.
Huh?
It's 1.5 foot above.
1.5 foot above the high level,
But his,
above the 79.6?
Well, it's 1,081 is high level, and
Uh,
82.5 or 1.5 foot above.
One of the, I must have misunderstood something, because I was under the impression that, current top of the floor is at 1083, so that's 3 feet above the 81.
Yeah.
80, or 2 feet above it.
2 feet above.
But you had the bottom of it, you're getting into it, the framework at about 79, aren't you? 79.6, something like that?
No,
No?
it's at least a foot, more than a foot
Okay.
above
Yeah.
the top level.
Yeah.
There's a picture in the,
I-
on the,
I,
that- I'm not sure I have it here, but I turned in a thing on the,
that's right.
there's a picture of
That's
the,
it.
where he made a mark.
That's all right.
Then it's blocked above it, and then.
Okay.
that.
Thank you. One of the concerns that I have, I guess, the major concern is that if it does flood, it's gonna cause damage to the house, the property, and maybe life of people living in it.
Which is him.
And the secondary part would be, if we grant the variance, do we as a county have, from a fiduciary standpoint, do we, you know, we have to protect the county, and is there a chance that, in the event that, we grant the variance and there is a flood and it causes the damage, now, can they come back and sue the county and, you know, for damages? Because we allowed them to build there, and that's a concern that I have.
I'm already grandfathered in.
Huh? You're grandfathered in on the other part of it, I agree with you, that we had, but that was before there were any ordinances, and there was never any involvement with any county boards or building or anything else, so that they have no liability there. However, if we grant this extension, then the question is, if something happens, and you or maybe somebody you sell it to may come back, when somebody is in a situation where they're in a dire strait because of a disaster like that, they go to a lawyer, and then the lawyers decide they're gonna go after whatever source of money they can find, and they could very well sue the county. And that's my concern.
Yeah, but don't we have a county attorney?
We do have a county attorney, that's true.
What was has he been asked?
Yes, he was asked, and he would not answer the question. Fairly, we have the right to grant a variance here, there's no question about it. And he did not want to slant the opinion on the thing. And he wanted to, he provided us with documents that we could look at and to be
Well, my problem
concerned
with
about.
your theory on that is every beach condo at Myrtle Beach is in a floodplain. Every single one of them is in a floodplain.
Yep.
And you're saying that Horry County, South Carolina, can be sued when they float off into the ocean?
Possibly, I don't know.
I don't think so.
I
It's
think
an
they
act
could,
of
I think they
God.
can be sued, whether or not they could prevail or not is
But
another
it-
matter.
This would be an act of God, and I think counties and states are exempt from lawsuits with regard to act of God.
I don't know. Well, it would be an act of God, but the fact that we made a variance and allowed him to build in an area that was suspect could cause it to be a problem for the county.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
if you take the way the state looks at it, they take the total square acreage of impoundment of the surface of the water. That dam, the way the dam, that spillway will not allow the lake to wash over the top of the dam, no matter what. It has.
Unless you had a superstorm that could.
Even if you.
Helene,
Huh?
like Helene.
Like the one that hit up North Carolina, not like what it hit
Well,
us.
that was because all that logs and stuff would have plugged it up. We had,
I agree that was extenuating circumstances up there.
statewide, I can tell you statewide, from Florence north, which is our area, we had no, my boss Chuck from DHEC, we had no dams fail, even in the hurricane. We had one ritzy neighborhood in Columbia, it washed over, and that was the only one, but it was so little of impoundment, it wasn't an inspected dam. And Duke Power, the 804 on Kiwi, that is Duke Power's projected awful flood height, the 804. Well, if you go down the end of the dam, down where the dam is at Kiwi by the nuclear station, the spillway gates, before it reaches 804, those gates would be almost 5 foot underwater, the spillway gates, which is a virtual impossibility. That's just for y'all's information.
Anyway, Okay, I think, let us just go through the other considerations, then we can get on with it.
I wonder if, is it other properties that are near his property that are also near on the water? Are other homes supposedly in the floodplain as
I would
well?
believe so.
Yes, since they redrew the
There's a number
maps,
of
So
yes.
this wouldn't be any different than several of the neighbors.
That's true. The only, the only difference would be that they were probably built before there were any regulations governing
Well, the
floodplains.
regulation used to be the high water mark. Anything in the high water mark was the floodplain. Anything above the high water mark was out of the floodplain. And then they went in and redrew the flood maps. When he talked about in 2005, when Ivan came through, they redid the flood maps because they had 4 houses flood.
Yeah.
But they flooded because of the beaver dam above it, not because of the storm Ivan.
Yeah.
So now they've gone and redone it again, and that's what he was talking about, that after the lane, they went in and redrew it again, so, the flood lines can move. And if you look at the whole map of the whole Lake Cherokee, you're gonna find that there are multiple houses in the floodplain
Yeah.
now that have never flooded,
Never.
never flooded, but they're now in the floodplain.
In fact, there's new houses. So, I mean, within the last few years.
Then, is there any more discussion on the considerations? No. Let's do the 16-169, excuse me, 16-169 conditions. Upon consideration of the factors listed above and the purposes of this article, the appeal board may attach such conditions to the granting of variances as it deems necessary to further the purposes of this article. The following conditions shall apply to all variances. 1, variances may not be issued when the variance will make the structure in violation of other federal, state, or local laws, regulations, or ordinances. Variances shall only be issued upon a determination that the variance is the minimum necessary considering the flood hazard to afford relief. Variances shall only be issued upon a showing of good and sufficient cause, a determination that failure to grant the variance would result in exceptional hardship, and a determination that the granting of a variance will not result in increased flood heights, additional threats to the public safety, extraordinary public expense, create nuisance, cause fraud, or victimization of the public, or conflict with existing local laws or ordinances. The appeal board may consider the possible impacts on flood insurance premiums and the size of the lot in question. An applicant to whom a variance is granted shall be given written notice specifying the difference between the BFE and the elevation to which the structure is to be built, and a written statement that the cost of flood insurance will commensurate with the increased risk resulting from the reduced lowest flood elevation. Such notification shall be maintained with a record of all variance actions. Upon request, the floodplains manager shall maintain the records of all appeal actions and report any variances to DHS/FEMA. Variances shall not be issued for unpermitted development or other development that is not in compliance with the provisions of this article. Violations must be corrected in accordance with section 16-85. Is there any discussion on those points?
Wow, that's a mouthful, if I understood half of what that
You can
just
read
said,
it.
a better person.
Yep. So, is there any discussion on those? No.
Well, you know, you're concerned about us being sued for, possibly for approving something that's in a floodplain, and then they have a flood, and then someone gets hurt or damaged or killed or something.
Whatever.
That we have a potential risk. I can see that on one side, but if there's a whole bunch of other homes along the lake that I've been there and are still there, then haven't had it, and there hasn't been any problems, I don't see that there's a high risk. And I guess that's what they're asking us as a Board of Appeals,
Yep.
is
Yeah.
how are we gonna measure that risk?
That's right,
Is the
and,
risk to
and it's
say-
an individual thing, how you feel about it. The only difference between the other homes that are there, and this particular case is that this is something that's coming about after regulations have been
Right.
put into effect, so that's a little bit different. In their particular case, they built prior to any, I think it was 2008, did you say, that the regulations came in? So that most of them were built prior to that date, so the county had no involvement in those at all.
Right.
They were built.
I
and-
understand, but the fact is, there hasn't been a flood, and the fact
Nope,
is, there
that's
isn't any
true.
problem with
That's true.
people that
Yep.
have a similar situation. So to me, that's something pretty solid to rest on.
No, that's a fact.
So just to clarify, the ordinance came into effect in 2008. The flood ordinance was not adopted until 2016.
16. Okay, so if there's no further discussion on that, then we can go to the questions. Okay. Okay, the first question, there are extraordinary and exceptional conditions pertaining to the particular piece of property. Do we have a motion in the affirmative?
So moved.
Do we have a second? Okay, do we have any discussion? There being no discussion, all in favor?
Yes.
These conditions do not generally apply to other property in the vicinity. Do we have a motion in the affirmative?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, do we have any discussion? There being no discussion, all in favor?
Unanimous?
Okay, unanimous. Okay, because of these conditions, the application of this chapter to the particular piece of property would effectively prohibit or unreasonably restrict the utilization of the property. Do we have a motion in the affirmative?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, do we have any discussion? There being no discussion, all in favor? Okay. The authorization of a variance will be of substantial detriment to adjacent uses or to the public good, and the character of the district will not be harmed by the granting of the variance. Do we have a motion in the affirmative?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, do we have any discussion? There being no discussion, all in favor? Opposed? Opposed,
Opposed?
yes. Okay, then now, what I'm going to do, I'd like to offer an amendment to the part where we're authorizing the variance, where the variance will be issued, and I'd like to offer an amendment if I could. Based on the evidence presented to the board, do we have a motion that the proposed variance be approved based upon Oconee County being held harmless in the event there is ever any damage to the property resulting from flooding, and that the property owner maintain adequate FEMA flood insurance on the property regardless of the cost?
No. He owns the property, he has a right to have flood insurance or not,
Yeah.
and I do not think Oconee County, unless he goes up there and blows up the dam, or something happens in a way that's not by an act of God, I don't think Oconee County can be held.
Okay, well, do we have a motion? If we don't have a motion, we don't have a second, then that dies. Okay, so we'll go back to the original one. Let's see, based on the evidence presented to the board, do I hear a motion that the proposed variance be approved?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Do we have any discussion? All in favor? Unanimous. Have your variance.
Thank you.
Have a Merry Christmas.
Have a
Sorry,
Merry Christmas.
sorry we put you through that.